Okay, so now, today we're welcoming Major Lorenzo A. Fiorentino. He is the author of Images of America, Illinois Military Monuments. This can be purchased online, and we'll discuss that at the end of the presentation. Major Fiorentino was in the Army for 21 years. He was also in the National Guard and the Reserve. He's currently a supervisor with juvenile probation, and he volunteers with the American Legion and Veterans of Foreign Wars. He's a board member of the Italian American Veterans Museum, a board member of the River Grove Historical Society, and right now, this evening, he will be broadcasting from the new Veterans Museum that was just dedicated yesterday. And if you're interested in visiting it, you can find it at 8664 West Grand Avenue, River Grove, Illinois, 60171. And if you're interested in touring the museum, please call them at 708-606-0742. And now I will hand it over to Major Fiorentino.
Thank you, Victor. So as Victor said, I wrote this a book on Illinois military monuments, and of course, people would ask me, well, why write this book? And I think there were two primary reasons why I chose to write this book. First off, I think it's important that we capture military monuments on film, because some of them do fall into disrepair, and at times some of them have just disappeared, that people never even knowing where they actually ended up. The other reason I wrote this book is I tried as often as I can to include information on our various Illinois hometown heroes. So here we see in 1869 in Bloomington, they erected in their center of Franklin Park Square to commemorate the McLean County citizens who died during the Civil War. Over the years, the monument began to disintegrate, and a committee was created in order to fix the monument. But unfortunately, the material of which the monument was constructed was so perishable that the entire monument was in danger of collapsing. Former Governor Joseph Pfeiffer lobbied for the city to just tear the monument down and build a new one in Miller Park in Bloomington. The lower half of the monument was saved and is currently located in Bloomington neighborhood of Briarwood. So basically this part, the part that has the four soldiers. The Elmwood Park had a World War II U.S. Army M3 Stuart tank as its war memorial from 1947 to 1998. In 1970, it was moved from Grand Avenue and Center Street, which is the top left picture. It was moved to its position where in the city circle. In 1999, it was sent to the Kenosha Military Museum and was replaced by an artillery gun. Yet the artillery gun still stands there today. The 1st Regimental Armory. This photo shows the 1st Infantry Regiment Armory of the Illinois National Guard. 1st Infantry, also known as the 1st Regimental Armory or the 131 Infantry Armory. It was located at the northwest corner of South Michigan Avenue and East 16th Street. It was built in 1891 and demolished in 1967. The 1st Infantry Regiment of the Illinois National Guard was mustered into service in April of 1917. In October of 1917, it was redesignated the 131 Infantry and assigned to the 33rd Infantry Division. On May 30th, 1918, it arrived in France. They participated in the Somme and Meuse-Argonne offensives between August and November 11th of 1918. On June 6, 1919, they were demobilized at Camp Grant and reorganized once again as the 1st Infantry. On December 13th, 1921, it was redesignated as the 131 Infantry and permanently assigned to the 33rd Infantry Brigade. Their motto is Deus Amor Patrie, and it means led by love of country. This memorial commemorates Fort Dearborn. It was built in 1803 On the left is the postcard, which we'll talk about in a second. On the right is the actual memorial that is all that's left on the spot where Fort Dearborn once stood. It was built in 1803 beside the Chicago River, but it was burnt down during the War of 1812. A second fort was reconstructed on the same site in 1816. In 1837, the fort was decommissioned. Parts of the fort were lost both to the widening of the Chicago River in 1855 and ultimately the fire in 1857. The last vestiges of Fort Dearborn were destroyed in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The memorial is at the site where it once existed. The postcard depicts the 120th anniversary of the Fort Dearborn Massacre of 1812 during the Century of Progress during Chicago's World Fair in 1933. A dedication was held on October 7th, 1896 for the Civil War Soldiers Monument at Hope Cemetery in Galesburg. Robert Todd Lincoln, son of President Lincoln and himself a Civil War veteran, gave a speech in front of the pedestal. If you look at the top left picture, there's no statue on there yet. Unfortunately, the stone sculpture of the soldier had not yet been completed and placed on the pedestal. However, in needing to keep with the timetable, they continued on and dedicated on the set date of October 7th. There is a large crowd in attendance, and as you can see, there's flags, etc., hanging by the entrance of the cemetery. The Peoria Civil War Monument, also known as the Shaft, it was dedicated October 11th, 1866 to over 600 Peoria County Union Civil War soldiers who gave their lives to help preserve the United States of America. This monument may have been the first of its kind in Illinois and perhaps one of the first of its kind in the nation. It stood on the courthouse lawn as pictured in the first picture on the left of the screen for 96 years before it was dismantled in 1962 to make way for a new courthouse. The plan had been to place it back in front of the new courthouse. On October 12, 2019, the remembrance celebration and dedication was held at the Springdale Cemetery in Peoria. It is located just inside the cemetery entrance on Prospect Road. So what happened between 1962 and 2019? Well, this happened. So if you see the gentleman on the top right, they were supposed to take it apart, store it indoors, take good care of it until it was time to reassemble it. However, that didn't happen. Some pieces were damaged from environmental deterioration. The surviving pieces were cast aside and even ended up being used in part in a marina where they were lost and forgotten for over 55 years. In 2017, a group of local historians located the surviving pieces and the restoration had begun. The quarry that produced the original monument in 1866 is still in business, and the Restoration Committee contracted with them to reproduce the lost or damaged pieces. That was huge because both the quarry and the contractor still existed, so they were able to recreate the parts they didn't have, including, if you see, at the time he was called Old Abe, the eagle at the very top of the pedestal, that had also disappeared, so that also had to be recreated to its original specifications. The Task Force Phoenix Memorial that was dedicated at Camp Phoenix, located just outside of Kabul, Afghanistan on August 29, 2009. It remained in place until the base was closed in 2016, and then it was moved to the headquarters of the 33rd Infantry Brigade in Urbana, Illinois. Phoenix lost 43 warriors, including 2 French, 2 Latvians, 3 Afghan interpreters, 36 Americans from different components and states. 18 of those 36 were from Illinois, and more than 90 others were wounded. The 33rd Infantry Brigade served in Afghanistan from October 28, 2009 to August 29, 2009. The overseas deployment to Afghanistan of nearly 3,000 Illinois National Guard soldiers from over 30 units across the state was the largest in the state's history since World War II. The 33rd Infantry Brigade was awarded the Joint Meritorious Unit Award for their actions. Illinois' sons and daughters have served our state and nation for nearly 300 years. Under the French, Kaskaskia residents participated in the first militia muster on May 9, 1723. From 1778 to 1779, Illinois militia joined Colonel George Rogers Clark and fought the British, contributing to the victories of the American Revolution. Captain Abraham Lincoln enlisted during the Black Hawk War, becoming a member of the Illinois militia on April 21, 1832. During the Civil War, 259,000 Illinois volunteer militia served. In 1918, Colonel Otis Duncan became the highest ranking African American soldier in the entire American Expeditionary Force during World War I. In 1942, 325 men from Company B, 192nd Tank Battalion suffered severe hardships as POWs at the hands of the Japanese during the Bataan Death March during World War II. These men were all from Maywood, Illinois. During Korea, most Illinoisans either enlisted into the military or were from the National Guard and Reserve, used as replacements. During Vietnam, pretty much the same thing. However, one unit, the 126th Supply and Services Company, was mobilized in its entirety, and we'll talk about that unit in a little bit here. The Gulf War, we sent the 233rd Military Police Company and several transportation companies, along with individual augmentees. And of course, during the Global War on Terror, just about every Illinois unit has deployed at least once to an overseas assignment. Additionally, Illinoisans have taken part in countless peacekeeping missions, whether it be to Kosovo or whether it be to Ukraine or Korea. We have spanned the globe. Illinois Guardsmen have earned 113 Medals of Honor. On the picture, what you see there is a World War II veteran, a Boy Scout, I'm sorry, that's a World War I veteran, a Boy Scout, and a Civil War veteran, all at a gravesite in Oakwood Cemetery during what was then known as Decoration Day. This is the memorial to the Bravo Company 192nd Tank Battalion. 593 members deployed, 328 did not return. General George Rogers Clark. He was an American surveyor, soldier, and militia officer from Virginia who became the highest ranking American patriot military officer on the northwestern frontier during the American Revolutionary War. He served as a leader of the militia in Kentucky throughout much of the war. He is best known and celebrated for his captures of Kaskaskia in 1778 and Vincennes in 1779 during the Illinois Campaign, which greatly weakened British influence in the Northwest Territory. The British ceded the entire Northwest Territory to the United States in the 1783 Treaty of Paris, and Clark has often been hailed as the conqueror of the Old Northwest. He did all this before his 30th birthday. After that, unfortunately, he didn't fare as well. He led a militia unit in the opening engagements of the Northwest Indian War, but was accused of being drunk on duty. He was disgraced and forced to resign. Despite his demand for formal investigation into the accusations, none ever came. He left Kentucky to live on the Indiana frontier, but was never fully reimbursed by Virginia for his wartime expenditures. During the final decades of his life, he worked to evade creditors and suffered living in increasing poverty and obscurity. He was involved in two failed attempts to open the Spanish-controlled Mississippi River to American traffic. After suffering a stroke and the amputation of his left leg, he became an invalid. He was aided in his final years by family members, including his youngest brother, William, one of the leaders of the Lewis and Clark expedition. He died of a stroke on February 13, 1818. The same year, Illinois became a state. Colonel Otis Beverly Duncan was an officer in the United States Army. He was the highest ranking African American in the American Expeditionary Forces at the end of World War I, serving as a lieutenant colonel in the 370th Infantry Regiment. Illinois paid for the training of an all African American regiment within the Illinois National Guard. This unit, organized in the 1870s, was known as the 8th Illinois Infantry. That's the memorial that you see on the left-hand side. It's called the Victory Memorial, and it memorializes the 8th Infantry. Duncan entered the Illinois National Guard in 1902 and was assigned to the 8th Illinois. He was commissioned as an officer. When the 8th Illinois was called into national service during the Pancho Villa expedition into Mexico in 1916, Duncan served as a major on the regimental staff. After the American entry into World War I in April of 1917, the 8th Illinois, still on national active service, was renamed the 370th Infantry. It was the only African American regiment to go into the American Expeditionary Forces while retaining most of its African American command structure. Duncan was awarded the Purple Heart and French Croix de Guerre for gallantry in action. After the war, the 370th reverted to its pre-war status as the 8th Illinois, and Duncan was promoted on March 18, 1919 to the full rank of colonel and commander of the regiment. Colonel Duncan retired as the head of the State Education Bureau in 1929. Today, it is known as the Illinois Board of Education. Lieutenant General Milton J. Foreman. Lieutenant General Foreman was born in Chicago. He was a hero of the Spanish-American War, the Mexican Border Service Campaign, and World War I. In the Spanish-American War, he enlisted in the Army as a private in Troop C, 1st Cavalry, on December 5, 1895. He worked his way up the ranks until he was a captain. In the Mexican Border Service, he was a colonel commanding the 1st Cavalry Division of the Illinois National Guard. He received the Distinguished Service Cross for bravery during World War I while serving in France. His actions, which earned him that medal, were, quote, when his unit came under heavy artillery and machine gun fire, he crept through the German gunfire, laying out telephone wires so that he could tell his artillery where the enemy had its gun positions. Foreman found the enemy gun positions and directed his artillery to lay down a barrage of shells to destroy them. This, if you remember, he was a full colonel. His career over the years, General Foreman was awarded for bravery the Distinguished Service Cross, the Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star citations, French Legion of Honor, and the Belgian Order of the Crown. During World War II, Foreman was honored with a merchant liberty ship that was named the SS Foreman. He was promoted to Brigadier General on June 23, 1920, and Major General on March 19, 1921. Upon his retirement in 1931, he was promoted to Lieutenant General. He was one of the organizers of the American Legion, and he was elected chairman of its executive committee at the Paris Caucus, at which he represented Illinois. Col John J Hardin. He was born in Frankfort, Kentucky, was a U.S. representative and militia general of Illinois. He served in the Illinois militia during the Black Hawk Wars of 1832. He was a brigadier general in command of the Illinois Mormon War in Hancock County in 1844. For those of you who may not know, the Mormon War was a group of Latter-day Saints who were wanting to establish a community within Illinois in Hancock County. Well, you know, as sometimes people can be intolerant, it literally ended up in the open warfare between the Latter-day Saints and the other residents. So the militia had to be called in to quell the violence. Colonel Hardin eventually would attain the rank of Major General. He was appointed prosecuting attorney of Morgan County in 1832. He served as a member of the Illinois House of Representatives from 1836 to 1842. He was co-editor of and founder of the Illinois newspaper in Jacksonville in 1837. He was credited with helping avert a duel between Abraham Lincoln and State Auditor James Shields. In 1844, Hardin was present at the USS Princeton when one of its guns exploded, and he helped manage the aftermath of the disaster, staying on the ship for nearly a week. He recruited the 1st Regiment, Illinois Volunteer Infantry, of which he was commissioned a colonel. However, on February 23, 1847, he was killed at the Battle of Buena Vista, Mexico, after attempting to lead a charge against a Mexican battery. That's the picture on the left-hand side. The outpouring of grief over his death was so immense, and Hardin's funeral procession was attended by 15,000 people. He was interred in City Cemetery, East Jacksonville, Illinois. Several counties are named after the colonel and his legacy. Captain Abraham Lincoln. He was an Illinois state representative, a United States congressman, the 16th president of the United States of America. He served as a captain in the Illinois militia during the Black Hawk War of 1832 in Rifle Company of the 31st Regiment Militia of Sangamon County, 1st Division. Lincoln never saw combat during his tour, but he was elected captain of his 1st company. He was also present in the aftermath of several of the war's battles, where he helped bury the militia dead. On June 26, 1832, the morning after the Second Battle of Kellogg's Grove, members of his company arrived at Kellogg's Grove to help bury the dead. Lincoln assisted with the burial and later made a statement about his experience. He said, quote, "I remember just how those men looked as we rode up the little hill where their camp was. The red light of the morning sun was streaming upon them as they lay head towards us on the ground. And every man had a round red spot on the top of his head, about as big as a silver dollar, where the Redskins had taken a scalp. It was frightful, it was grotesque, and the sunlight seemed to paint everything all over." On the right side picture, what you see is it's a lithograph of Captain Lincoln, and behind him, right over his shoulder, you see an Indian. It's a popularly repeated story from Lincoln's Black Hawk War Service, which illustrates his qualities of honesty and courageous and competent leadership. It involves a Potawatomi who wandered into Lincoln's camp. Lincoln's men assumed him a spy and wanted to kill him. The story goes that Lincoln threw himself between the Native American and his men's muskets, knocking their weapons upward and protecting the Potawatomi. The militiamen backed down after a few heated seconds. Colonel Robert R. McCormick. He is shown in his World War I uniform on the left. On the right, he is actually inspecting gun emplacements for the 1st Illinois Cavalry. He was a force of nature in politics for many decades. He was the publisher of the Chicago Daily Tribune, the founder of WGN Radio in 1924, and the founder of WGN TV in 1948. WGN stands for the world's greatest newspaper, the slogan of the Tribune. The Cantigny Woods Military Museum and Conference Center west of Chicago was the home of Colonel McCormick. His time in service affected him so deeply and so much that he dedicated his entire estate to becoming a military museum and arboretum. It's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful museum. If you ever have a chance, I encourage you to go and see it. Veterans of the 134th Illinois Volunteer Infantry assemble in Chicago to remember their fallen. This is roughly 1885. The 134th Regiment Illinois Volunteer Infantry was an infantry regiment that served in the Union Army during the American Civil War. It was among the scores of regiments that were raised in the summer of 1864 and known as the 100 Days Men, an effort to augment existing manpower for an all-out push to the end of the war within 100 days. That didn't happen, as we all know, and the war continued on, and these at the time young men continued on until the end of the war. This picture shows members of the Pioneer Squad Number 1 in Austin, in the Austin area of Chicago. It was dedicated in 1910. They were organized officially in October of 1908. Eligibility was for the grandsons of Mexican, civil, or Spanish American veterans. The banner picture with the group reads Pioneer Squad Number 1, Grandsons of Veterans, Austin, Chicago, Hoorah for Grant. After a while, there were no more members of this organization left, and so the veterans of foreign wars wanted to keep their memory alive. And located on the West End Avenue at the corner of Austin Avenue, this monument was dedicated, the one on the right bottom, in 1949 by the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 2955 in honor of all those who had served in our nation's wars. Third Liberty Loan Parade. This particular one was in Rockford. A Liberty Loan Bond, or Liberty Loan, was a war bond that was sold in the United States to support the Allied cause in World War I. Subscribing to the bonds actually became a symbol of one's patriotic duty in the United States and introduced the idea of financial securities to many citizens for the first time. Parades, both military, veteran, and civilian, were organized in order to boost these sales. These sales helped win World War I. World War I veterans from Sterling Rock and Rock Falls are assembled in 1933 to establish the Rock Falls Sterling American Legion Post. The United States sent 4,734,000 soldiers and sailors to Europe and suffered 116,000 deaths, according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Records from the Illinois Office of the Adjutant General list more than 351,000 Illinois men who served in the Army, Navy, and Marines during World War I, and some 5,000 of them died. One of every 12 enlisted in the Army hailed from Illinois, and each left their own mark. As you see here, it's the 126 Supply and Services Company. On November 1st, 2016, the 126 Supply and Services Company was reactivated as the 126 Quartermaster Company in Quincy. The 126 Supply and Services Company was the only Illinois National Guard unit to deploy to Vietnam, where it served for a full year from 1968 to 1969. The Quincy, Illinois-based new 126th Quartermaster Company was awarded the lineage and honor of the old 126th, including its unit service in Vietnam. In the picture, you see the veterans that served in Vietnam on the left and the veterans who now take up the flag on the right. James William Robinson Jr. was born in Hinsdale, Illinois on August 30th, 1940. On April 11th, 1966, he earned the Medal of Honor posthumously. Robinson earned the award while serving with the U.S. Army in Vietnam. He was a sergeant in the infantry when he was killed under heroic circumstances. He was 25 years old. Pictured here are members of the River Grove who served during World War II and members of the American Legion on parade. If you're interested in being able to purchase the book, you can find it on Amazon, Arcadia, or if you'd like an autographed version, you can look it up on eBay on those websites. This concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
If you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box and we'll see what the questions are. Okay, I guess we're all set here. So thank you for coming out, and we'll be working on getting this up on most likely Facebook. And be sure to take a look at the library's other social media. Thank you for coming out this evening and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great